quick background on me, I'm Andrew Mandzy. I'm from Stackline. We're a retail technology company. I've been in this building many times. And my role is really to support our global clients and to make sure that they're not transactional ones, but they're strategic ones, and that we can build a partnership across the full funnel, driving value for our clients. But it's not really about me, although I will answer the unlearned question. I almost unlearned that today is my wedding anniversary. I realized it yesterday. But I learned it again yesterday. And I was like, I need to get my act together. And I'm here with Rebecca. And Rebecca and I met for the first time in person 25 minutes ago. And the first time we ever spoke was yesterday morning, but we're gonna talk for the next 30 minutes like we're old college pals, just kind of shooting the breeze, right? That's right. And this is also the first session, so we're trying to set the tone. Thank you again, Church Dwight, for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's get after it, right? Correct. I'm a father of a toddler, right? And so I'm very familiar as a parent with the brand, with Happy Family, Happy Baby. I'm like one of those people when I go into a Whole Foods and I see the pouches, my hand goes to the back, I touch the back of the shelf, and just I slide everything into the basket, right? I'm that guy.
Yeah, you are people.
Yeah, so I'm definitely a consumer, but as like a data guy and a strategy guy and just someone who's been in CPG for a long time, like I love a good CPG startup story. You know, I've walked the halls of Expo West countless times watching thousands of brands kind of try to like find their way. Yeah. And Happy Family has done that. Like, I'd love to hear the story of the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. How many parents are here? Yeah. So you guys have all, or you know people who are parents, you guys have seen those pouches. I started with the company back in late 2014. Happy Family was founded in 2006 by an amazing entrepreneur, Shazi Visram. She had an idea in business school to start an organic baby food company. Didn't really exist at the time. Pouches didn't exist at the time. She started in frozen baby food, went into cereal, puffs. Everybody's had puffs. And I think in 2009, the first pouch came. And so Shazi, the brand was acquired in 2013 by Danone. And so when I started, it was still very much a startup, and I left my agency world to come and lead a creative team. I was a new mom at the time, and it was an amazing experience. Entrepreneur-led, you learn a ton. You learn to never say no. We as well are very, wear all the hats, and that has, I think, really molded what our organization is today, and it's a mission-based company. That mission hasn't changed, which is pretty exciting. And today, I can say we're the #1 organic baby food company in the U.S., which is really exciting as well.
And the acquisition was a while ago, like 10 years at this point. But I think if everyone just kind of looked up at the ceiling and thought of an example of an acquisition of a smaller brand by a bigger global conglomerate, that brand kind of lost its mojo, right? And we probably think of one, right, off the top of our head. Talk to me about sort of like an insider perspective on the creative side of things. Like, how do you keep that authenticity as a brand?
Yeah, so we were pretty lucky. You know, Danone shares a lot of the same core values that Happy does. I am one of those people who really believe in purpose. I think you have to know what your brand does in the world. It's how you show up to consumers, it's how you communicate with them, it's your packaging, every touch point. And so for us, you know, Danone's mission is to bring, can't mess this up, to bring health to people, I have it written down. Yeah. Bring health through food to as many people as possible. Happy's mission was to change the trajectory of children's health and nutrition. And so those things really align. You know, Danone is a massive B Corp. We as well, I think, got our highest score to date, which I think was 113.1 for anyone who follows B Corp. It's a really good score. And you know, the support that we get from Danone, we like to call it the best, the big, and the small. So I'm hearing your leadership talk about how you guys are lean. That allows for us to move really in a very agile way, which is exciting. I sit, you know, as the lead of creative, I sit right next to our marketing lead. I talk to the sales team. I know what our buyers want and why they want what they want. And those things make us very agile, and I think Danone supports that. We recently took on Aptamil, so for any of you very young parents with babies, you may have noticed in 2022 there was formula shortage, massive crisis. President Biden came to Danone and asked for help. And so we were able to support the fly formula shortage with Aptamil, and it was because of our structure that we were able to do that.
Great, thank you. And when we were talking yesterday, when we were talking as old college buddies recently at a happy hour that we were at with our kids and families, and your kids' names escape me at the moment. I have no idea what your husband's name is. But when we were talking yesterday, and there was something you said around sort of the structure of your team, and I did that like dog thing. You know when dogs, like you say something to your dog, they're like, they're like, I did that. You talked about the uniqueness of your creative team and how it sits within the organization. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, we are definitely a unique organization. Like I said, when I started, it was a startup, very different team. We used a lot of agencies, they were amazing. We have amazing partnerships. I would say that we are a constantly evolving hybrid model. There's things that I believe are very important to keep in-house: creative strategy, packaging, production, things that allow you to move really quickly. We also we keep e-com, our digital shelf, shopper. A lot of owned media stays in-house as well. For parents, it's really important to be able to research. So, the way that our organic Instagram channel is run, currently, it's us in-house, real people. And those things it builds that authenticity, but it also allows for nothing to fall between the cracks. You've got the same creatives who are there from inception all the way through innovation. Our timelines are very, very short, but those same people are creating overarching creative strategy and bringing it through into e-com and testing and learning all along the way. I heard you guys talking a lot about that. We believe in test and learn and adapt. And that's how we are a little bit different. We have a very strong digital focus, a very strong packaging CPG focus. And with those things, it allows for us to grow when we have a big campaign coming out or we're developing the website. That's where we would be leveraging our agency partners, and they are phenomenal partners. But we like to think of ourselves as a partner as well to the marketing team and the brand teams.
It's fantastic. And another thing, dovetailing off of that, there's a data piece to it. So creative, obviously, there's a bunch of different insights that come to you that ultimately get fed, and on the back end of it, there's a creative execution. How do you leverage data? What are the things you're looking for? What are the insights you need to drive creative execution?
So I think it's different depending on what you're driving, what type of creative execution it is. Like I said, we're sitting alongside those marketing teams. We're sitting alongside brand teams, and so it's very easy to sit there and say, well, I heard in this research this one thing. Now I'm going to take it differently than my brand team is going to take it. And those things being applied is actually a really big competitive advantage, I think. So in briefing, we were recently briefed last week on a project, and we were able to say, hey, so when we redesign this product, actually there was an insight from FAQs on Amazon, or reviews on Amazon, which are a massive way to get a lot of real consumer insights, better than research in my personal opinion, that drove the packaging. And so let's take those insights again and apply it now to the e-com and to the rest of the CPJ. And having a team there who's along the way allows for that to happen.
And then thinking about your category, think of that creative execution, how data kind of funnels its way down. There's a lot of things that you do are just top of funnel, right? There's brand awareness exercises, there's education, there's parenting advice, there's all these things and all these touch points, but then there's also the moment of truth when a transaction is happening, and like Andrew Mandzy walking to Whole Foods and just sliding rows of pouches into his basket, right? There's those moments. But at the same time, even though there's all these things happening and all these touch points, you have to be consistent in how you're talking about yourself and your values. Walk me through the thinking, how you manage that, especially with the amount of touch points you have.
Yeah, so we've been adapting our brand guidelines and our toolkits and the way that we leverage those across all of our agency partners, but also across all of our internal members as well. There's a couple of key rules that we have. One is that we always show real ingredients on our products. They are real ingredients. It's amazing nutrition. I don't know what I'm allowed to actually say. I'm biased, of course. But it's meant to make it easier for a parent to shop. You should be able to walk down the aisle and be like, I want greens. I got my greens. But you may not also be going down that aisle and looking for Happy Baby green pouch. You might be looking for an organic pouch. And so we want to be the pouch that immediately screams to you that this is going to be the most nutritious thing that you can feed your child. Because again, we're not talking about a yogurt that you're buying as a snack. We're talking about, in some cases, the sole nutrition of an infant or a baby 6 months up. So it's a little bit different. So real ingredients is key, transparent about recipes, what's inside. And then when we get into marketing as well, it's like real babies, real parents, real moments. Even when COVID came and there was a lot of challenges to have those moments. You know, I used to like to go to people's homes, the lifestyle photographer, and just see what we got. It was kind of a get what you get, don't get upset situation. And we got some really amazing moments, but now even in studios, it's the same sort of mindset of like real children, real kids. And when you have all of these different pieces of assets, you've got real ingredients, you have an authentic purpose, you know what you're doing, everybody on the team can ladder that back to our purpose, things start to become more consistent. And I'd say also, you know, we do test and learn. There's times where we run a campaign that feels really off for us, not for the community out there. And we've learned from it. Sometimes that will completely reshift the way that we look at creative strategy. But because we're a constant recruitment brand, we believe in always-on marketing. It's across, God, 10 different channels, always, all the time. You know, you have that flexibility to keep doing that.
You know, and I think, and ultimately it's like what you're doing is trying to drive loyalty. So at that moment of purchase, there's the parent who's just like, yeah, that's my brand, I'm going with it. But the catch, I think, with anything in the baby category is like, even though I know plenty of adults who act like babies, everyone stops being a baby, right? And so you are in this 100% customer churn moment where you then have this need to acquire more customers, right? So how do you think about loyalty of existing customers versus customer acquisition?
I'll say that constant recruitment is real. It makes for a very unique and high touch and accelerated work environment because everything is constantly moving and you're learning and adapting and all of those things. I would say to anyone that's purchased our brand, when you think about our brand, what do you think of? And is it happiness? And sometimes when we sit and research and we ask parents, you know, can you recall our brand? And they're just happy. Not a lot of brands have that ability to connect directly to an emotion. And so in a lot of ways, yes, it's constant recruitment and we can double down as much as possible and be there as consumers are changing, the landscape is changing so fast. There's always a new place that you're supposed to show up. Influencer marketing has completely shifted over the last year, 2 years. So with that, I think you kind of marry those two pieces together. I want a parent who has exited the shopping cycle to, you know, remember us when they have a second baby or when their friend is looking for food. And it's very easy to remember happiness.
Fair. Like my wife today when I say happy anniversary. All right.
We'll give you some pouches.
Yes.
I think I've got coupons with it.
The other piece is, you know, from the inception of the company to today, we're going on, you know, almost 20 years, right? So parents are probably a little bit different. You're dealing with different generations with different needs and different mindsets and different sort of reactions to like clean products and natural and organic, right? There's a lot of things happening over the last 20 years. What have you learned along the way around sort of generational differences?
I think the best example that I heard recently, I was at a talk about influencer marketing and a woman was speaking about the difference in that package that you send to an influencer and what a Gen Z parent versus or a Gen Z consumer, let's say, versus a millennial consumer was expecting in that moment. And so for a millennial, they had wanted the pretty box. They want flash, they want pizzazz, they want all that kind of stuff. They want to have like the moment when they show Instagram that they have this cool thing. There's a lot of waste with that, not super sustainable. Gen Z, very different. Gen Z can see past that. And they want the thing that is good. And they want you to prove that you as a brand are true to who you are. Kind of have to walk the walk the talk.
One of those.
One of those. But I think that's a big difference, right? Gen Z cares, like legitimately cares. And for a brand like Happy, we are advocating, I think in 2018 they started advocating for the acceptance of organic and WIC, which is huge, and I think we're up to 36 states, don't quote me on that, 39, 36, I forget the number. But things like that matter, and they matter to the people who work at Happy. And as our little business unit is starting to take on additional brands and getting to do all these great things with Danone, I think the core of who Happy is almost resonating more now for Gen Z parents.
That's great. And then so with that, right, with the transition of different generations, there's also the last couple of years have just been just like constant change, right?
Yeah.
So COVID, the sort of fragmentation of social media, there's so many things from a creative standpoint that you're thinking about. What did you guys get right over the last couple of years, and what do you think you still need to work on?
I think the brand has been doing a lot of things right, and I think a lot of it comes from a sense of just being okay with trying new things. And that really comes from an amazing marketing organization and a brand organization that wants to try new things. And I think that there's troubleshooting that we've done, and like how we can, for us, getting lifestyle photography of children is really tricky during a time when you can't be with kids. And how we troubleshot that was an interesting way of meeting new parents across the country and asking them to take photos with their children. And those are very small examples, but for the creative team, that's what we have to play with. Like, that's all we really have. And at a certain point, my kids are aged out. Our team, we were noticing our own kids are aged out. There's only so many photos you can take of the same kid. So you have to start getting creative. But I think, what's been most interesting is watching the team show up and find ways to adapt and find ways to share. You've got a creative who is doing creative strategy, brand world, and she is sitting in her home in Brooklyn. And you've got another creative who's in Jersey working on e-com. And they haven't been in the office together at all. And how are they gonna share? And they can be the best of friends, and we meet 3 times a week and have all the sharings in the world. Things fall through the cracks. And so it really takes a vested interest of our creative team to be constantly on top of pulse across the entire landscape.
It's a great answer. And then just one quick thing too. It's like kind of hitting upon like a lot of change that's happening is, I was at an apparel company yesterday doing a strategic planning session and asking them like, what are you guys thinking about for the rest of 2023? They're like, we just want to get through 2023, right? They're a massive global brand, right? That's a category that's very prone to recession, right?
Yeah.
T-shirts, sweatshirts, apparel is like, it's very discretionary, but AB feels feels pretty recession-proof, generally speaking. There's trade-offs, private label, there's cheaper options, there's sort of decisions you make, but ultimately it feels like macroeconomic conditions are impacting a lot of categories. How does that impact what you do on the creative side?
So for most parents, baby food is a non-negotiable. For a lot of parents, formula is an intervention that has to be there. And those aren't things that you trade off. And so educating consumers on what we offer as our products is huge. So we have a very high touch research category. You're not gonna necessarily just go to the shelf and buy a formula and give it away, just try it. So how we are doing all of that kind of communication to our consumers and making sure that they really understand, that has been a huge learning, but it's also been something that we take very seriously, and I think it's a way that we are able to mitigate some of that trade-off as much as possible. And then, you know, in our category, the last couple of years have been rough. You know, parents have gone through a lot. And our goal of showing that we are there for them, and our goal is to make it easier for them to navigate their feeding journeys. That has been, I think, a focus to avoid recession and all of those things, but also just make sure that we get products into parents' hands that need them.
Fantastic. I'm just gonna fire off a bunch of things at you, and you're just gonna go, right?
Yeah, sure. Great.
Biggest challenge in your industry?
Sustainability.
Your favorite Happy Baby pouch flavor?
Mango, clearly crafted, but only because you can do so much with it besides give it to your baby. It is delicious. You can bake with it, make cocktails.
You live in New York, we're in Ewing, New Jersey. What is your favorite city outside of those two?
You had to remove Ewing? Come on.
It's
Can I
either
say,
one or
like,
the other, right? So yeah.
An all-inclusive in Cancun.
There you
With my
go.
family.
If there was a movie about your life, who would play you?
So, I was talking to my daughter about this question. She's 9. And I said, over dinner, this is a great question. What, like, would it be? She was like, I would play me. I'm the original. And I was like, I'm using that. So that is it.
So the movie about your life would be a documentary. Okay.
I only watch that, I have a hard time with movies, so I like documentaries.
Okay. I think that's it. I think do we have time for questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you for not making me walk too far.
Hi, I wanted to ask, just because Church Dwight is very oriented or interested in sustainability. We were the first sponsors of Earth Day back in 1970. We were still the only sponsor in 1990. And it's obviously, as you mentioned already, growing interest among our consumers. I wonder with, your pouches, that's a challenge, right? The sustainability end of it. Has there been anything you've learned in the course of trying to increase your sustainability with those and other packaging that you could share or suggest to us? Because we have some packaging that just has requirements that makes it difficult.
Yeah, and it's not me specifically, but we have team members who are really working to change the industry. I think that, I recently was listening to Colgate-Palmolive do a talk about their toothpaste containers, and they basically went to the industry and said, we have to do this, that, this is for the greater good, and then they didn't put a patent on it so that everybody should do that to their toothpaste containers. I mean, that's the goal. For us, I think people tend to look at glass, this could be a personal, people look at glass as being a more sustainable thing. The carbon footprint of glass is not. And so we balance that out, and I think that with pouches, the biggest struggle is the infrastructure isn't there yet. So even with the materials that are advancing, we're talking about food safety, and that is one of the hardest things with plastics. I think it's really easy to get mad at the entire plastics industry, and I think that, the plastics industry is doing a lot to try to improve, which is fantastic, but as well you have to think about, how are brands getting organic food into food deserts? They're not doing it, they have to use plastic in a lot of ways. And so there has to be trade-offs, and it has to be done in the right way. But Danone and Happy, sustainability is a huge focus of ours, so it makes me feel good working at a company that it is.
I'd also like to add, as I walk the mic over to this gentleman, that Danone is basically the largest B Corp in the United States. And I'm gonna do a brief ad. I have a podcast called Insider Interviews as part of what I do as a trade journalist, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Linda Bethay, who a lot of the people in this room know, who is the head of marketing at Danone, and she talks a lot about their sustainability efforts. It's called, write this down, Insider Interviews with E.B. Moss.
Actually, just a quick follow-up on that question. One of the things that struck me is you talked about glass, right? So it's all about consumer perception, right? And knowledge of what sustainable isn't. Any particular, again, with you having the pouches and so forth, anything you've done to try and educate the consumer on those differences or any insights that you've seen in the industry?
Yeah, we have jars as well. Jars don't do as well. Having something that you can throw in your bag that's light, and hand it to a child to eat on their own, self-eating is huge. So there's a consumer behavior shift that is, I don't wanna say tricky, I think it's just a reality of the needs of parents. And I think that the education piece is hard because parents don't really care when it comes, you're at Target and your baby's crying and you just wanna buy 100 pouches. So I think it's, we say we just wanna educate because it's the right thing to do. And so I think that's what we try to do on our social channels. I will say that it does not get the engagement that we would hope, but it doesn't mean that we'll stop sharing.
One quick one, anyone? Okay, sorry.
Yep, no
Get
problem.
the next person.
You mentioned younger consumers, Gen Z especially, really, expecting brands to be good and, do good and be credible and authentic about that.
Yeah.
How do you communicate that from a creative perspective when you've got maybe 6 seconds or a moment at the shelf with packaging? How do you bring that across credibly, and avoid sort of the trap of, coming across like you're greenwashing or something? You mentioned the WIC advocacy. That's hard to communicate in, 15-second ad or a 6-second bumper.
I think the question is more around if you're being authentic and you're trying to communicate to consumers about this is a food that they should trust or that they should feel good about and all of those things, you're not gonna necessarily communicate and tell them the story of all the things that you do from a mission standpoint. We do on our website, we do on our social channels, like I said, we do on our brand store or our enhanced content, things like that in e-com where people will be researching, and if they wanna learn more, they do. And I think that's pretty much the difference between Gen Z and Gen X or millennials is they actually will sit there and research and know before they make that decision and commit to spending hundreds of dollars on a product. I don't think that when it comes to ads, it's necessarily the time. And I think that there's a lot of brands will come out and be like, well, we're number one, but prove it, right? And you can't prove it in 6 seconds, and so you have to kind of decide if that's the right message. I don't think that consumers wanna hear the chest beating of what we do. That's amazing, we do it because we know it's the right thing to do. And I think holding that passion for what's right is, at Danone, we kind of have the leeway to do that. You won't always, but I think it's choosing what is the right message for the channel, for the consumer specifically, for the niche product. It like goes so far down.
And it sounds like authenticity is your through line. And so if you have that across all of those channels where you're always on, that's gonna hopefully underscore that message. Great job, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rebecca.
Thank you.
It was awesome.